Good news everyone, the Moza R12 has received a price reduction from $589 to $499. Even though more than 10% of price reduction into this wheelbase is a good piece of news, it's not even the biggest one. That would be what they call Moza, the 4-seatback 3.0. This video is a re-upload to correct the mistake. Most of the things that I say will still stand, with the difference that this new firmware addresses somewhat the oscillation issues available on the Moza R12. Moza sent this for review last year. I have an affiliate link with them and also with Race Anywhere and GT Omega. All opinions are my own about what I'm going to say next. If you want to help the channel out, press that like and subscribe button, and a big thank you to all the channel members and Twitch subscribers. If you want to help the channel, why not become a channel member as well? I've done a review of the Moza R12 last year, and basically everything that I said still stands. There are a few changes now with the price and also with the 4-seatback change that makes this even more compelling. With the price drop, it becomes cheaper than pretty much everything out there around this price point. It is cheaper than the Logitech Pro, the T818, the Camus C12, not the DD-WB, the Club Sport DD, and the Ace Attack La Prima, and basically everything else that I remember. And once again, with the 4-seatback change, this is quite interesting. This experimental firmware with the 4-seatback 3.0 is available to the all Moza R12 owners as long as you do these steps, and the 4-seatback 3.0 will also be available later to other Moza wheelbases. And the firmware that you need is 1237, and to get to that, you need an experimental version of Moza Pithouse. If you go to their Discord, they'll explain how to get it. Essentially, you need to have access to the beta test code that is available over here. You copy it, you go to your Moza Pithouse, you go to this little symbol over here where you can do the updates or the rollbacks. You press this area, you delete, you insert the version that they tell you, and press confirm. It only works when it's running on administrator mode. And after restarting all of this, you should have access to this new firmware, and you need to recalibrate the base as well. As for the settings that I'm running, it's basically the same settings that I've been running before, especially for Assetto Corsa Competizione, because Assetto Corsa Competizione is very strange with their 4-seatback. It has a lot of dampening, and I remove every single thing that is mostly a filter. With road sensitivity, I leave it at 9, and it kind of feels to me that the higher the road sensitivity, the less interpolation it has, or the filtering, and wheel spring strength, wheel dampening will be set at 0, maximum wheel speed 50%. For me, it makes not much difference. Game 4-seatback 100%, you want basically all of the signal going in. On advanced settings, I leave it at 85, and then everything that is some sort of dampening, I would just remove it. 4-seatback equalizer seems okay to me. I would probably raise for myself just a little bit of the curbs and the ABS vibration. This also heightens a little bit the understeer effect in my experience. Mix curve is like this. These settings run very well for Assetto Corsa Competizione and also iRacing, as long as you remove a little bit of road sensitivity. In my opinion, iRacing feels a little bit better, but you do you. For iRacing and Assetto Corsa and Autoballista 2, there are a bunch of ways of going forward with your 4-seatback preferences. But for me, Assetto Corsa Competizione, it's a little bit different because of all the dampening in the steering rack.
In order to talk about the changes for 4-seatback, we really need to go back to the past when I did a review of this wheelbase. Back then, I said it was incredibly competent. For the price, it was very good. Then later, some issues have been found with heating with some people. Some people also report quality wine. Normal stuff that is kind of expected. The 4-seatback, I thought, was very competent. It wasn't the best out there that I found out. It was very good. There's really nothing to complain about it. It's fast enough wheel. It's still not one of the fastest out there, but it works exceptionally well. It had all the details you needed. In my opinion, there still are better wheelbases out there, but for the price, you can't really complain that much, especially with Moza. You have such a good quick release. The system is kind of open if you want to do something else. You don't really need to spend that much money compared to Fanatec. even though Fanatec now with the quick releases from China has decreased the cost of opening up the system. Very good, but if I had to define it back then, even with firmwares that were, you know, happening 6 months later, I would call it generic. Generic, but good. You know, a very good generic, does everything okay, gives you all the information that you need. Or, I don't know, maybe standard issue. It was one of the force feedbacks or the experience you had. You could say this could be the standards, and I guess everybody will be okay, because there might be better. There's definitely worse, much worse in it, even in direct drives. Works perfectly, and nothing wrong with it, right? I think whoever buys the Moza R12, generally they'll be happy, and they should be happy with it because it's a very good wheelbase. With the force feedback 3.0 though, I know there's a lot of talk about when they do, oh, it's the new version of it, it's majestic. Generally, they tend to polish their turd. Of course, there will always be improvements. However, I wasn't really expecting an improvement of this level, especially for firmware updates. Firmware's updates can bring, you know, good levels of detail or good levels of performance extra, but generally this tends to be kind of, you know, it's an iteration. And what we got here was more of a revolution for Moza on R12, to the point I'm thinking, man, they need to really release this for the R21 and for the R16, because it does feel like a completely different wheelbase that has completely different internals. And I am using a release R12, probably one of the very first internal versions they have. Same hardware as before, and it feels like a completely different wheelbase. Going over curbs, it feels there's definitely more suspension travel. It feels that the force feedback is a little more tuned, I guess. It has more detail into it. And the only time I've seen something like this, such a big difference between firmwares, was with the Fanatec DD1. And I'm not talking about just from one to the next. You would need to take, you know, a firmware from 20 or 2021 and compare it to the latest firmware. There's a huge difference between that one, an old DD1 firmware, and the new one. And since we're talking about DD1, we need to talk about Fanatec, and it's not the way you think, which generally for this price point or for this level of performance in direct drives in 2024 generally would be, you know, price, but it is not. So bit of context again, whenever I do a sim racing review, I tend, for Assetto Corsa Competizione, I tend to get everything that is a filter to zero, so no dampening, no friction, no anything, because this title already has so many things going towards the force feedback, so adding more for me, it doesn't really work. It's not really worth it, but it's also a good way to kind of harmonize and feel the differences between wheelbases. And that was something interesting when I saw in the comparison between the Asetek and the Club Sport. I found the Club Sport a little bit better for me. I thought it was better for me because it had more detail in Assetto Corsa Competizione. It felt that it was more connected to the road. You felt more of the curbs. You felt more of the undulations, the suspension, travel, and, you know, removing everything to zero in terms of filtering. It's a kind of a same thing, more or less, to try to figure out what are the real differences between wheelbases, the same way that, you know, hardware reviewers, when they do cooling analysis, it's kind of the same thing. And, you know, for force feedback, I find it's a good way to figure out what the hell is happening. Hence my preference over the Club Sport, from the Club Sport over the Asetek Forte in this title specifically. Whenever everything else, they were very, you know, trading blows. As for the R12, and this is what I found very interesting, if the Asetek Forte was going towards a smoother approach, less, you know, violent over the curbs, you know, at these depressions, when you go over these depressions on the camber, right? And the Club Sport was very there, like a, you know, a big dog pulling you and tugging you, giving you all that stuff. The Moza if with this new firmware or firmware update for the new force feedback algorithm they have, if they got here by accident, I can say that they were very much inspired by the Fanatec force feedback, because in between this force feedback, in terms of characteristics, in terms of the way that they feel, in terms of how grabby it is, there isn't really much in terms of characteristics between the two wheelbases. The Club Sport DD is faster, and it's noticeably faster, and it's less dampened even. The Ace-Attack is also faster, once again, than this wheelbase. However, this wheelbase, the R12, is taking a lot of characteristics from the force feedback of Fanatec, and I think for me that is undeniable where they are trying to get their force feedback next. So, of all the force feedbacks, you know, you could take inspiration from. If they took inspiration from, they took it from Fanatec. Kind of strange, but I kind of like it, because special in ACC, it is grabby, it is alive, it is, you fight it. It's, you know, when you drive with the Fanatec wheelbase, ACC, it feels like always a, not gonna say a struggle, it feels like you're always working out the car, even if you don't have force feedback too strong. And Moza went that way. They want something a little violent, almost. And I like it, you know, because I like very much, especially on a Club Sport DD, I really like that force feedback in this title. For all the wheelbase star review, it's definitely the best, still is the best force feedback out there for this specific title, and Moza is looking at that direction. And in my opinion, there's really nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think those are pretty much very shocking revelations, because in my opinion they're turning this into this, and for me there isn't really anything wrong with that, because even though there's this new force feedback update, the Club Sport DD Plus and the Club Sport DD I think are still superior wheelbases. They'll feel a little bit faster. But here's the thing, there's a difference between this and the Club Sport DD. It's around 200 pounds, and if you go to the Prime or the Club Sport Plus or even the Forte, it's even more than that, and that's the price of a new wheel that you can put on top. And then the experience, even though it may be better, a little bit faster, maybe a little bit crisper on the Club Sport DD, for most people that really doesn't justify the price difference. And with the force feedback experience that you get in this, well, it is a very compelling case to go towards a Moza, or even keeping with your Moza R12 and not move into a Moza R16 or R21 or something like that, because the force feedback experience in this, it is copying, in my opinion, or rather emulating, or, you know, got there because by accident, something like a Club Sport DD, and in my opinion that is really good. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see a comparison between the R12 and the Club Sport, maybe even the Logitech Pro. I think that would be interesting to have. If you enjoyed the video, press like and subscribe, and why not consider becoming a channel member to help the channel out. Have a great one.